The pre-dawn darkness clung to Fort Bragg like a shroud as Staff Sergeant Maya Reeves jogged across the empty parade ground. Her breath misted in the February cold, boots crunching on frost-covered grass. She'd been summoned to Colonel Harwick's office at 600, unusual, urgent, and deliberately vague. The message had arrived at 4:30, jarring her from a fitful sleep plagued by dreams she couldn't quite remember. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. The administrative building loomed ahead, its windows glowing yellow against the purple sky. Maya climbed the stairs two at a time, her mind racing through possibilities. A deployment, family emergency. She'd spoken to her mother just yesterday. Everything had been fine. She knocked twice on Harwick's door. "Enter." The colonel sat behind his desk, his usually warm expression replaced by something Maya had never seen before, pity. Beside him stood Captain Richardson from JAG, the Judge Advocate General's Corps. Legal. Maya's stomach dropped. "Sit down, Reeves," Harwick said quietly. She remained standing. "What's this about, sir?" Richardson slid a manila folder across the desk. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she opened it. The words swam before her eyes. Official complaint, fraudulent qualification scores, preferential treatment, compromised unit integrity. Her name appeared again and again, each mention like a knife wound. "This is garbage," she said, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. "Complete fabrication, sir." "I know that, Maya." Harwick used her first name, breaking protocol, a bad sign. "I've served with you for 3 years. I've watched you outshoot men twice your size, carry wounded teammates under fire, and lead missions that saved American lives. But my hands are tied here." "Tied by what lies?" Maya's professionalism cracked. "Who filed this?" Richardson cleared his throat. "That's confidential during the investigation phase. However—" "It was Master Sergeant Derek Vance," Harwick interrupted, earning a sharp look from the JAG officer. "Maya deserves to know who's trying to destroy her career." The name hit like a physical blow. Vance. The decorated combat veteran who'd made his opposition to women in special operations crystal clear during every inter-unit briefing, every joint training exercise, every conversation in the mess hall. The man who'd told her to her face that she'd get real soldiers killed, and that her presence was political correctness gone lethal. "He's been planning this," Maya whispered. "All those questions about my qualification scores, the training reviews he requested, he was building a case. The complaint alleges you falsified marksmanship scores, received coaching during selection that male candidates didn't receive, and that command pressured evaluators to pass you," Richardson recited mechanically. "There's also an allegation that you've been physically involved with a superior officer who's influenced your career advancement." Maya's vision tunneled. "That's a lie. Every word is a calculated, deliberate lie." "We believe you," Harwick said. "But until the investigation concludes, protocol requires certain actions." The door opened. 2 military police officers entered, their expressions apologetic but firm. Maya recognized them, Corporal Hayes and Specialist Dixon. She'd trained with Hayes. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "Staff Sergeant Reeves," Hayes said formally, "pending the outcome of the investigation, you're required to surrender all issued weapons and your security credentials. You'll be placed on administrative leave, confined to base, with restricted access to unit facilities." The words felt unreal, like dialogue from a movie happening to someone else. Maya's hand moved automatically to her sidearm, a Sig Sauer M18 that had been with her through 2 deployments. Her fingers hesitated on the holster. "Don't make this harder than it is," Harwick said softly. She unholstered the pistol, cleared it with practiced precision, and placed it on the desk. The metal clicked against the wood, final and condemning. Hayes secured it in an evidence bag. Dixon stepped forward for her rifle, her primary weapon, a customized M4 that she'd qualified with, competed with, fought with. She'd named it Danny's Promise after her brother, killed in Kandahar 6 years ago. The rifle had saved her life in Mosul, taking down 3 insurgents who'd ambushed her patrol. She'd maintained it obsessively, knew every scratch, every adjustment, every quirk of its mechanism. "Not that one," she heard herself say. "Please." "I'm sorry, Staff Sergeant." Dixon took the rifle gently, respectfully, but took it nonetheless. Maya felt something break inside her chest. They were stripping away more than weapons. They were dismantling her identity, her purpose, everything she'd sacrificed to become. "Your security badge and building access card," Richardson prompted. She handed them over mechanically, watching her career dissolve into evidence bags and administrative paperwork. "The hearing is scheduled for Monday, 900 hours, Richardson continued. "You'll be assigned a defense counsel. Until then, you're ordered to have no contact with members of Phantom 6 or anyone involved in your selection process. Violation will result in additional charges." "Phantom 6 is my team," Maya protested. "They're my—" "The order stands." Richardson closed his folder. "You're dismissed, Staff Sergeant." Maya stood at attention, saluted Colonel Harwick, perhaps for the last time as his soldier, and turned to leave. As she reached the door, Harwick's voice stopped her. "Maya, off the record, fight this. Fight it with everything you have. Vance has done this before to other women. Nobody's had the courage or the platform to stop him. You do." She nodded once, not trusting her voice, and walked out into the dawn. The parade ground was filling with soldiers beginning their morning PT. Maya recognized faces from her unit, from allied teams, from countless training exercises. Some nodded respectfully. Others looked away. A few whispered, their eyes following her with expressions ranging from sympathy to suspicion. By noon, everyone would know. By evening, the rumors would be fact in the minds of half the base. By Monday, her reputation, built over 8 years of service, 2 combat deployments, and qualifications that 90% of male candidates failed, would be ashes. Maya walked toward her barracks, weaponless and alone, as the sun broke over Fort Bragg. Behind her, in an office 3 buildings away, Master Sergeant Derek Vance watched from his window, a satisfied smile playing at his lips. He'd started a war. He had no idea what he'd unleashed. The weekend passed like a slow-motion nightmare. Maya spent Saturday in her barracks room, staring at the empty gun safe, fielding carefully worded text messages from Phantom 6 teammates who weren't supposed to contact her. Sergeant Luis Ortega had sent a simple message. "We know the truth. Hold the line." But holding the line felt impossible when she had no weapon to hold it with. Sunday brought unexpected orders. Mandatory attendance at the Joint Inter-Service Combat Efficiency Showcase. Every Special Operations unit on base would be present for demonstrations, briefings, and what Command euphemistically called capability sharing sessions. Maya knew what it really was, a chance for elite units to show off, for commanders to jockey for funding and recognition, and for rivalries to simmer just below the surface of professional courtesy. The last place she wanted to be was on display, stripped of her credentials, walking among soldiers who might already believe Vance's lies. She entered the main briefing hall at 8:45, taking a seat in the back row. The room filled quickly. Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Marine Raiders, Air Force Special Tactics, and various specialized units she recognized by reputation. The energy was testosterone-heavy and competitive, exactly the environment where Vance thrived. At 900 sharp, he entered. Master Sergeant Derek Vance commanded attention simply by existing. 6'3", 220 pounds of muscle and ego, with a chest full of ribbons that told a story of 20 years in special operations. He'd earned his reputation in Fallujah, in the mountains of Afghanistan, in a dozen classified operations that had become legend in the Spec Ops community. Behind him walked his hand-picked demonstration team, 5 men who looked like they'd been carved from granite. The morning presentations droned on. Units showcased new tactics, equipment innovations, training methodologies. Maya barely heard any of it. She was acutely aware of eyes flicking toward her, of whispered conversations that died when she looked up, of the psychological isolation Vance had engineered. At 1100, Vance took the podium for his presentation, maintaining standards in high-performance units. Maya's hands clenched in her lap. Standards, Vance began, his voice carrying easily through the room, are what separate special operations from regular forces. Standards are non-negotiable, non-political, and non-discriminatory. You either meet them or you don't. He clicked to his first slide, a graph showing selection course pass rates over the past decade. Notice anything interesting? Vance asked. Pass rates for traditional candidates have remained consistent, roughly 18%. But in the past 3 years, we've seen anomalies, statistical outliers that don't match historical patterns. He was talking about her. Everyone in the room knew it. Maya felt heat creeping up her neck. Some people take shortcuts, Vance continued, his eyes finding Maya in the back row. Some people benefit from political pressure to achieve diversity metrics rather than operational excellence. And when that happens, real operators, the ones who earned their place through blood, sweat, and legitimate qualification, pay the price. The room had gone silent, every eye turned toward Maya. She stood up slowly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Say it to my face, Vance," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. "Stop hiding behind your PowerPoint and say what you mean." Colonel Harwick, seated in the front row, started to rise. Staff Sergeant Reeves. "No, sir." Maya walked down the aisle, every step deliberate. "Master Sergeant Vance has filed official complaints questioning my qualifications. He's standing up here implying I'm a fraud. So let's stop pretending this is about statistics and standards. Let's talk about what this really is." She stopped 10 feet from Vance, close enough to see the calculation in his eyes, the slight upturn of his mouth. He'd wanted this confrontation. He'd engineered it. "You think you belong here, Reeves?" Vance asked quietly, dangerously. "You think you've earned the right to wear that tab on your shoulder?" "I know I have. The question is whether you have the integrity to admit it." Vance's smile widened. The room felt like a powder keg waiting for a spark. "All right," he said. "Let's settle this the old-fashioned way. You want to prove you belong, prove it." He gestured to his 5-man demonstration team, who moved to stand beside him. "My best against you. Hand-to-hand combat. No weapons, no equipment, just skill and will. 2 minutes on the clock. You survive against all 5 for 2 minutes and I withdraw every complaint. Your record gets cleared, your weapons returned, your reputation intact." The room erupted. Voices overlapped, shock, excitement, protests from senior officers. Maya's mind raced. This was insane. Those 5 men were all certified Level 3 combatives instructors. Combined weight advantage, over 400 pounds. Combined experience, nearly a century of close-quarters combat. It was a setup, a public humiliation designed to prove his point. But it was also the only way out. 48 hours, Maya said. "I want 48 hours to prepare." "Done. Wednesday, 1400 hours, Combat Training Center. We'll set up the mat, and everyone here will witness whether you're really qualified or just a political checkbox." Colonel Harwick pushed through the crowd. "This is highly irregular. I can't authorize." "I authorize it," came a voice from the doorway. Brigadier General Patricia Moss entered, her silver star gleaming. The room snapped to attention. If Staff Sergeant Reeves believes this will resolve questions about her qualifications, and if Master Sergeant Vance is willing to stake his complaint on the outcome, then let's get it on record. Her eyes swept the room, hard as flint. But understand this, the results will be binding. No appeals, no second guessing. Whatever happens Wednesday, that's the final word. She looked directly at Maya. "Are you sure about this, Staff Sergeant?" Maya thought of her empty gun safe, of her brother's grave at Arlington, of every woman who'd tried to earn her place and been pushed out by men like Vance. "Yes, ma'am, I'm sure." Vance extended his hand, a gesture of false sportsmanship. "Looking forward to it, Reeves. Hope you've been training." Maya didn't take his hand. 48 hours, Vance, bring your best." As the room dissolved into chaos, officers arguing, soldiers already placing bets, reporters scrambling for details, Maya walked out into the noon sun. She had 2 days to prepare for a fight she couldn't win through strength. 2 days to find an edge against 5 elite warriors who wanted nothing more than to prove she didn't belong. 2 days to save her career, or watch it die in front of 300 witnesses. Captain Sarah Chen, the unit psychologist, caught up with her outside. "Maya, this is suicide. Those men are professional fighters. This isn't about combat effectiveness. This is about humiliation." Maya kept walking toward the gym. "Then I'll just have to make sure I'm the one doing the humiliating." "How? You've been off training for 2 weeks. You're giving up 70 pounds to the smallest guy on that team." Maya stopped, turned, and for the first time since Friday morning she smiled, cold, focused, dangerous. "Then I guess I'd better be smarter, faster, and willing to do things they'd never expect from someone they've already underestimated." She had 48 hours. Time to get to work. The base gym was empty at 300 Monday morning when Maya slipped through the side door. She'd barely slept, 2 hours of restless half-consciousness filled with fragmented images of her brother's funeral, her selection course, and Vance's 5 men circling her like wolves. 46 hours remained. She wrapped her hands methodically, the ritual familiar and centering. Her knuckles were already bruised from Saturday's training session when she'd attacked the heavy bag with something close to rage. Today required discipline, not emotion. Emotion got you killed. The heavy bag swayed as her fists connected, jab, cross, hook, uppercut. Her combinations felt sluggish, timing off. 2 weeks away from combat training had eroded the edge she'd spent years sharpening. Against one opponent, maybe 2, she could compensate with technique and speed. Against 5 simultaneous attackers, each one larger and more experienced. The math didn't work. "Your stance is too wide." Maya spun. Sergeant First Class Luis Ortega emerged from the shadows near the weight racks, carrying a tablet and a duffel bag. "You're not supposed to be here," Maya said. "Contact with me violates." Yeah, the order. I'm terrified." Luis dropped the bag at her feet. "You think I'm going to let my teammate walk into a slaughter without intel? Harwick can court-martial me later." He activated the tablet, and video filled the screen, fight footage of Vance's 5-man team. Maya recognized the setting, last year's All-Army Combatives Championship. "Meet your opposition," Luis said. Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb, former Golden Gloves boxer, 2-time Army Combatives champion, 195 pounds. Staff Sergeant Kyle Morrison, wrestling background, competed at NCAA Division II, 210 pounds. Sergeant Tom Chen, not related to Captain Chen, thank God, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, 185 pounds but fights at 205. Specialist Jake Rodriguez, Muay Thai specialist, spent 3 years training in Thailand, 200 pounds. And the big one, Sergeant First Class Danny Kowalski. Yeah, same first name as your brother, weird coincidence. Former Marine Raider, 230 pounds of bad intentions. Maya watched the footage, her tactical mind cataloging patterns. Webb led with his right, telegraphed hooks. Morrison shot for takedowns predictably, always after a jab feint. Chen was smooth, technical, patient, the most dangerous. Rodriguez threw beautiful combinations but dropped his left hand. Kowalski relied on size and power, bull-rushing opponents. "They're used to fighting one-on-one," Luis observed. "Watch Morrison's footwork when Webb fights. He doesn't account for space management with multiple bodies." "Because they've never had to," Maya said quietly. "They've never been outnumbered." "Exactly, but you have." Maya's mind flashed to Mosul, pinned down with 3 teammates against 15 insurgents. They'd survived by being unpredictable, by using chaos as a weapon, by making the enemy's numbers work against them in confined spaces. "Show me the mat dimensions for Wednesday," she said. Lewis pulled up the specs, 30 feet by 30 feet. Standard competition size, but with 5 attackers plus herself, the density would be extreme. "Bodies become obstacles," Maya murmured. "In that space, they'll interfere with each other if I stay mobile. If I get pinned against one opponent, I'm done. But if I keep moving, force them to chase, create collision points. You're still giving up 400 pounds combined weight and decades of combined experience. Then I can't fight their fight." Maya started packing, her mind racing through scenarios. Traditional combatives assumes relatively equal size and strength. It assumes you're trying to dominate position and submit your opponent through superior technique. I can't do that, not against 5. "So what can you do?" Maya stopped packing. "Strike fast, disengage before they can grapple, use their momentum against them. Don't try to win exchanges, just neutralize and move. In and out, never stay still, make them work together, which they've never practiced." "That's a lot of theory, Maya. You've got 46 hours to make it muscle memory." Lewis unzipped the duffel bag, revealing training pads, focus mitts, and a boxing dummy. "Captain Chen sends her regards, by the way. She's not officially helping, but she left these in the gym accidentally, with a note about visualization techniques and managing performance anxiety." Despite everything, Maya smiled. "Tell her thanks unofficially." "There's something else you should know." Lewis's expression darkened. "I've been hearing things. Vance didn't just volunteer his team for this. He's been coaching them specifically for fighting you. They've been running drills against a female training partner for the past 3 days." The words hit like ice water. He planned this. The whole confrontation, the challenge, he engineered it knowing I'd accept. "Gets worse. There's money moving. Big money. Betting pools across 3 bases. Current odds are 12-1 against you lasting 90 seconds. 90 seconds. The match is 2 minutes. Yeah, but apparently nobody thinks you'll make it past 90. Vance has been guaranteeing people you'll fold around the 1-minute mark." Maya felt the weight of it, not just 5 opponents, but hundreds of soldiers betting on her failure, convinced she was a fraud who'd finally be exposed. The pressure threatened to crush her. "Hey," Lewis gripped her shoulder. "You know what your brother used to say, right? I served with Danny before he died." Maya's throat tightened. "What?" "He said, size doesn't matter if you're smarter and faster. And if you're not smarter and faster, you better be meaner. You're already smart and fast, Maya. Time to get mean." The rest of Monday dissolved into brutal training. Lewis ran her through scenario after scenario, multiple attackers, confined space, asymmetric size matchups. Maya's body screamed in protest, muscles remembering dormant patterns, old injuries flaring back to life. By 2200 hours, she could barely lift her arms. "Again," she gasped. "Maya, you need rest. Overtraining now will." "Again." Lewis sighed but took his position. They ran the drill 15 more times before Maya's legs gave out and she collapsed against the wall, soaked in sweat and shaking. "Go sleep," Lewis ordered. "I'll be here at 500. We've got 1 more day." Maya nodded but didn't move. When Lewis left, she sat alone in the empty gym, the silence oppressive. Her phone buzzed, a message from her mother. "Heard what's happening. Your father says don't do this. Too dangerous. Come home." Maya stared at the screen, then typed back, "Can't. Have to see it through." "Why? Why does it have to be you?" Maya's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Why? Because 7 other women had been driven out by Vance's complaints and nobody had stopped him. Because if she ran, it would validate every doubt about women in special operations. Because her brother had died believing in something bigger than himself, and she owed it to his memory to do the same. She typed because someone has to. Her mother's response came immediately. Then when? Not for them, for you. Maya closed her eyes, and for the first time since Friday, tears came. Hot, angry, cathartic. She let herself cry for 60 seconds, then wiped her face and stood. Tuesday morning arrived with Lewis pounding on her barracks door at 4:45. Rise and shine, warrior. 28 hours to go. The day was worse than Monday. Lewis had recruited help. Captain Chen appeared with sports psychology exercises, visualization techniques for managing the adrenaline dump Maya would experience. A combat medic showed up with tape and braces, explaining how to minimize injury during high-impact exchanges. By Tuesday afternoon, Maya's body was a constellation of bruises. Every movement hurt, but the drills were sharper now, instinctive. Her mind had shifted into combat mode, cold, calculating, predatory. At 1900 hours, Lewis called a halt. That's it, no more training, rest and recovery from here. I'm not ready. You're as ready as you're going to be in 48 hours. More training now just increases injury risk. He handed her a protein shake and an ice pack. Listen to me. You've got the technical skills. You've got the tactical plan. What you need now is the mental game. I'm fine mentally. Bullshit, you're terrified, I can see it. Maya wanted to argue, but he was right. Terror had been her constant companion since Friday, not of physical pain, but of public failure, of proving Vance right, of becoming the cautionary tale that kept other women from even trying. They expect you to be scared, Lewis continued. Use it. Fear sharpens reactions, increases pain tolerance, triggers survival instincts. Don't fight the fear, channel it. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. At 200 Wednesday morning, she gave up trying and walked to the memorial wall on the eastern edge of base. Rows of names etched in black granite, soldiers who'd paid the ultimate price. She found Danny's name in the third row. SGT Daniel Reves, killed in action, Kandahar Province, 2018. Hey, little brother, she whispered, touching the cold stone. I could really use your advice right now. The wind rustled through nearby trees, carrying the scent of pine and approaching rain. Maya stood there for an hour, remembering. Danny teaching her to fight when they were kids because their father was deployed and the neighborhood boys were cruel. Danny encouraging her to join the army, even when their parents protested. Danny's last letter, written 3 days before he died. Make your own path, Maya. Don't let anyone tell you where you don't belong. As dawn broke over Fort Bragg, Maya walked back to her barracks. She showered, dressed in her PT uniform and braided her hair with mechanical precision. 12 hours remained. At 900 she received a text from an unknown number. Good luck today. Prove them all wrong. General Moss. At 1000, Colonel Harwick sent a message. My office is open if you need to talk. At 1100, the betting pools updated across base social media. Odds against her had shifted to 15-1. At 1200, Maya forced herself to eat lunch, though her stomach churned with anxiety. At 1300, she stood in the women's locker room at the Combat Training Center, staring at her reflection. The woman looking back was bruised, exhausted, and terrified. But she was also a soldier, a special operator, someone who'd earned her place through the same crucible that forged every man who'd ever questioned her right to be there. Maya pulled on her rash guard and fight shorts, wrapped her hands, and stepped out of the locker room. The main training hall was packed. 300 soldiers, maybe more, pressed against the walls. Someone had set up a regulation 30x30 competition mat in the center. Cameras on tripods, because of course this would be recorded. Vance stood on one side with his 5 men, all wearing matching black rash guards, looking like an execution squad. Colonel Harwick approached Maya. Last chance to back out, no shame in it. There's every shame in it, sir, respectfully. He nodded, understanding. Then go show them who you are. Maya walked to the mat. The crowd's murmur died to silence. Across from her, Vance smiled. "Ready to prove you belong, Reeves." Maya stepped onto the mat, her fear transforming into something colder, harder. "Let's find out." Referee, a senior master sergeant from the combative school, stepped to the center of the mat. His voice carried through the silent hall like a gunshot. "This is a demonstration bout. 5-on-1 engagement, 2-minute duration, unarmed combat only. A competitor is considered neutralized when they tap out, lose consciousness, or are immobilized for 3 seconds. Staff Sergeant Reeves must neutralize all 5 opponents or survive the full 2 minutes to win. Any questions?" Maya shook her head. Across the mat, Vance's team spread into a loose formation. Webb and Morrison on the flanks, Chen and Rodriguez in the middle, Kowalski hanging back like a hammer waiting to fall. "Competitors ready?" the referee asked. Maya rolled her shoulders, shook out her hands, and dropped into a fighting stance, weight on the balls of her feet, hands up but loose, breathing controlled. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her mind had gone crystalline and calm. Combat mode. The fear was still there, but it had become fuel. "Ready," she said. Vance stepped close to his team, said something Maya couldn't hear. All 5 men nodded. They weren't smiling anymore. This was business. The referee raised his hand. In the crowd, Maya caught Lewis's eye. He tapped his temple twice. "Think fast," their old signal from missions. The hand dropped. The buzzer screamed. Marcus Webb exploded forward immediately, exactly as Lewis had predicted. Big, aggressive, leading with power. The classic mistake, rushing in without setting up, trusting size and strength to overwhelm. Maya had 3 seconds before the others closed the distance. Webb threw a heavy right cross, telegraphed and overcommitted. Maya didn't retreat. She stepped into the attack, inside his reach, redirecting his fist past her head with her left forearm. His momentum carried him forward, weight shifting onto his front foot. She hooked his ankle with her right leg, drove her shoulder into his exposed ribs, and used his own forward pressure against him. Physics did the work. Webb crashed face first into the mat with shocking speed. Before he could recover, Maya dropped onto his extended arm, trapped it between her legs, and applied a textbook armbar, hyperextending the elbow joint. Tap, tap, tap. Webb slapped the mat frantically. 8 seconds elapsed. The crowd erupted, but Maya didn't hear it. She was already moving, rolling away from Webb's neutralized body as Morrison and Rodriguez rushed from opposite sides. They'd learned from Webb's mistake, coming together trying to pin her between them, cut off her escape routes. The mat suddenly felt smaller, the walls of bodies closing in. Maya didn't retreat. She accelerated toward Morrison, the wrestler, because wrestlers always shot for takedowns. Predictable. Morrison dropped his level, reaching for her legs. Maya sprawled her hips back, denying the takedown, then wrapped her legs around his neck from behind while he was still bent forward. A flying triangle choke that used her entire body weight. Morrison's face turned red. He tried to stand to slam her into the mat, but she locked the position tight, squeezing the carotid arteries. His movements became frantic, desperate. 12 seconds, someone shouted from the crowd. Rodriguez arrived, trying to break Maya's hold on Morrison. He grabbed her ankle, pulling hard. Pain shot through her leg, but she'd trained for this, multiple attackers, constant transitions. She released Morrison suddenly, the unexpected loss of resistance making Rodriguez stumble backward. Morrison collapsed, gasping, one hand weakly tapping the mat. 2 down, 18 seconds. But Maya had no time to celebrate. Tom Chen, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, was already on her, moving with technical precision rather than emotion. He'd watched, waited, learned from his teammates' mistakes. Chen shot for a single-leg takedown, proper technique, controlled aggression. Maya defended, but he was good, smooth, patient, working for position rather than forcing it. They grappled standing for precious seconds, Chen trying to drag her to the ground where his grappling advantage would dominate. Maya knew she couldn't win a ground fight against a black belt. So she didn't fight on his terms. She stopped resisting his takedown and instead fell backward deliberately, pulling Chen with her. But as they fell, she got her feet on his hips and pushed. A Tamo Nage, a judo throw that used his forward momentum to flip him overhead. Chen sailed through the air and crashed into Jake Rodriguez, who'd been circling for an opening. Both men went down in a tangle of limbs. The crowd's roar was deafening. Maya rolled to her feet, but her ribs screamed. Morrison's earlier grip had done damage. She tasted blood from a split lip, though she couldn't remember taking the hit. 28 seconds elapsed. 3 opponents down, 2 still in the fight, but Chen and Rodriguez were recovering faster than she'd hoped. Then Danny Kowalski stepped forward, 230 pounds of controlled violence. He'd been patient, studying her, waiting for her to tire. And Maya was tiring. Her breath came in ragged gasps, muscles burning with lactic acid. The initial adrenaline surge was fading, replaced by the grinding reality of physical exhaustion. Chen regained his feet, shaking off the collision. Rodriguez was slower but rising. Maya was suddenly facing 3 fresh opponents in a confined space with nowhere to run. Kowalski smiled, a predator's expression. Not bad, Reeves, but playtime's over. He moved with surprising speed for his size, cutting off her angle to the left. Chen mirrored him on the right. Rodriguez blocked the rear exit. They were boxing her into the corner of the mat, eliminating her mobility advantage. Maya's mind raced through options. She couldn't let them trap her. Corner fighting against multiple opponents was suicide. But the mat was only 30 feet square, and 3 men controlled most of it. 32 seconds. 90 seconds remained, but it felt like an eternity. Kowalski feinted high. Maya didn't bite. When he committed low, she was ready, knee strike to his face, fast and brutal. But Kowalski absorbed it like it was nothing, caught her leg and started to lift. If he got her airborne, slammed her, the fight was over. Maya didn't panic. She drove her other leg up, wrapped it around Kowalski's neck, and used her body weight to twist violently. The unexpected torque broke his grip. They both crashed to the mat, Maya landing on top. She hammered elbows into his guard, not trying for a submission, just causing damage, creating chaos. Kowalski tried to buck her off, but she rode his movement like a bronco, staying mobile, unpredictable. Chen dove in to assist his teammate. Maya saw him coming in her peripheral vision. No time to counter, only to evade. She rolled off Kowalski directly into Chen's path. They collided hard, Chen's knee catching her in the shoulder. Bright pain exploded through her arm, but she trapped his leg, twisted, and heard him cry out as his ankle hyperextended. Not broken but damaged, Chen hobbled backward, grimacing. 45 seconds. Rodriguez came from behind, a Muay Thai clinch, his hands locking behind her head, pulling her down for devastating knee strikes. Classic technique, brutal when executed properly. Maya tucked her chin, protected her face, but the first knee slammed into her ribs, the same ribs Morrison had damaged. Something cracked, not broken but badly bruised. The pain was blinding. Rodriguez pulled her down for another knee. This one would finish her. Maya stopped resisting his pull and instead accelerated into it, driving forward with her legs. The sudden cooperation threw Rodriguez off balance. She got her forearm under his chin, pushed his head back, broke the clinch. Then she swept his front leg hard and low. Rodriguez toppled backward. As he fell, Maya followed, driving her knee into his solar plexus. The air exploded from his lungs in a whoosh. She trapped his arm in a Kimura lock, bending it at an unnatural angle. Tap, she hissed through gritted teeth. Rodriguez's hand slapped the mat, 3 down. 52 seconds, 78 seconds remaining. But Maya was hurt now. Her ribs screamed with every breath. Her shoulder felt loose, possibly partially dislocated. Blood ran from her split lip down her chin. Sweat stung her eyes. And she still faced Kowalski and Chen, the biggest and most technical of the five. They'd stopped rushing. They circled her carefully, communicating with glances, coordinating their approach. They'd seen what happened when they attacked individually. Now they were working as a team, and Maya's advantage was evaporating. The crowd noise had become a continuous roar, individuals screaming encouragement or predictions, bets being updated in real time. Maya blocked it all out. There was only the mat, her opponents, and the clock. 60 seconds, 1 minute down, 1 minute to go. Kowalski and Chen moved simultaneously, one high and one low, cutting off her angles. Maya tried to circle away, but her mobility was compromised. Pain slowed her reactions. Chen grabbed her ankle. Kowalski crashed into her upper body. The combined attack drove her to the mat, and suddenly she was in the worst possible position, on her back with two opponents controlling her limbs. This was it, the position she couldn't escape from, the end everyone had predicted. But Maya Reeves hadn't survived 2 combat deployments by accepting defeat. She bridged violently, arching her back, using every ounce of remaining strength. The sudden explosion of movement created a half-second of space. She yanked her leg free from Chen's grip, kicked him in the chest, sending him sprawling. Kowalski tried to pin her shoulders, establish mount position. Maya shrimped, a basic jiu-jitsu escape, hips rotating out from under his weight. She got her legs between them, pushed, created separation. Both fighters scrambled to their feet. 70 seconds elapsed. Maya's vision swam. Exhaustion and pain were overwhelming her nervous system. Her guard was dropping, reaction slowing. Chen was back on his feet despite the injured ankle, limping but functional. 2-on-1, 50 seconds remaining. They came together, coordinated and relentless. Maya defended desperately, but she was giving ground now, backing toward the edge of the mat. Her counters were weaker, less precise. 80 seconds. Chen shot for another takedown. Maya sprawled, but Kowalski was there immediately, grabbing her from behind, trying for a rear-naked choke, the deadliest submission in combat sports. His thick arms snaked around her neck, locking in place. Maya's airway compressed. Panic flared, instinctive, primal. She had seconds before consciousness faded. But panic was just another form of energy. Maya dropped her hips, changed her base, and threw herself backward with all her remaining strength. She and Kowalski crashed to the mat, his body cushioning her fall. The impact jarred his grip loose for a fraction of a second. That was enough. She twisted free, rolled away, gasped air into burning lungs. 85 seconds. 15 seconds to survive. Chen limped forward, determined despite his injury. Kowalski rose like a mountain, his expression grim. They knew they had her, knew she was running on fumes. Time to fold, Reeves, Kowalski said. Maya stood on trembling legs, blood and sweat dripping from her face. Every part of her body screamed for her to quit, to tap out, to end the pain. Instead, she raised her fist and smiled through bloodied teeth. Come make me, 86 seconds, 14 seconds to survive, or 14 seconds to win. Maya's mind, oxygen-deprived and pain-soaked, made a calculation that defied logic. She couldn't last 14 more seconds defending. Her body was shutting down, reactions dulling, guard dropping. Every defensive movement was a fraction slower than the last. But offense was chaos, offense was unpredictable. And chaos was the only advantage she had left. Chen and Kowalski moved in cautiously, having learned respect for her counterattacks. They expected her to backpedal to survive, to play defense until the clock expired. Maya charged. The crowd's roar reached a fever pitch as she exploded forward, not at Chen with his injured ankle, which would be logical, but directly at Kowalski. the 230-pound hammer who outweighed her by 80 pounds. Kowalski's eyes widened for a split second. He'd expected retreat, not aggression. That split second was all Maya needed. She dropped low, below his center line, and drove her shoulder into his lead knee, not trying to take him down, but to destabilize his base. As his weight shifted backward, she popped up and threw a palm strike at his throat. Kowalski blocked it, grabbed her wrist, tried to yank her into a clinch where his size would dominate. But Maya had anticipated this. She let him pull her forward, used the momentum, and jumped, wrapping her legs around his waist, her free arms snaking around his thick neck. A guillotine choke from standing position. Kowalski's face flushed red. He was strong enough to stay on his feet despite her weight, but the choke was tight, cutting off blood flow to his brain. He stumbled backward, trying to shake her off, crash her into the mat. Chen rushed to help his teammate. 89 seconds. Maya saw Chen coming in her peripheral vision. She couldn't maintain the choke and defend simultaneously, so she did neither. She released Kowalski suddenly, again using the principle of unexpected cooperation, and kicked off his body, launching herself backward. She twisted in midair, landed in a crouch, and Kowalski's staggering momentum carried him directly into the path of the rushing Chen. They collided with a meaty thud. Kowalski's elbow caught Chen square in the face. Chen's injured ankle buckled under the impact. Both men went down. 90 seconds, 10 seconds remaining. The crowd was insane, screaming, chanting, stomping. The noise was a physical force. Maya could see Lewis jumping up and down, could see Colonel Harwick on his feet, could see General Moss with her arms crossed and the faintest smile on her face. But she also saw Kowalski and Chen rising, hurt, frustrated but not finished. 9 seconds. Maya's body had nothing left. Her legs trembled, her vision blurred at the edges. The cracked ribs sent lightning bolts of agony through her torso with every breath. 8 seconds. Kowalski charged one more time, a last desperate attempt to salvage victory. No technique now, just raw aggression, trying to tackle her to the mat and pin her for the final seconds. 7 seconds. Maya didn't have the strength to counter, couldn't generate the explosive movement needed for another throw or reversal. Her gas tank was empty. But she didn't need strength, she needed geometry. 6 seconds. She waited until Kowalski was 2 steps away, fully committed to his trajectory. Then she dropped flat to the mat, dead weight, completely removing the target he'd aimed for. Kowalski tried to adjust mid-charge, but physics and momentum betrayed him. He tripped over her prone body, his own weight and speed working against him, sending him crashing into the mat boundary. 5 seconds. Chen limped forward on his damaged ankle, reaching for Maya. She couldn't stand, couldn't run, could barely move. 4 seconds. Chen dropped down, trying to secure any hold, any position that would immobilize her for the final 3 seconds. Maya tucked into a ball, protecting her neck and limbs, making herself the smallest possible target. Chen grabbed her shoulder, started to roll her over. 3 seconds. Maya exploded out of the ball, arms and legs extending violently in all directions, a technique called shrimping in jiu-jitsu, but executed with pure desperation rather than technical precision. The burst of movement broke Chen's grip. 2 seconds. Chen lunged again, caught her ankle. Maya kicked frantically with her free leg, catching him on his already injured ankle. Chen's face contorted in pain, his grip loosening. 1 second. Maya yanked her leg free and rolled away, putting distance between them, sprawling flat on the mat with her limbs spread wide. Impossible to grab, impossible to control in the time remaining. The buzzer sounded. For a heartbeat, silence. Complete, absolute silence as 300 soldiers processed what they'd just witnessed. Then the combat training center exploded. The noise was deafening, half the crowd screaming in triumph, the other half in disbelief. Money was changing hands furiously. Officers were on their feet. Even the referee stood frozen, momentarily forgetting his job. Maya lay on the mat, every muscle screaming, unable to move. Her chest heaved as she gasped for air. Blood from her split lip had dripped onto the mat, creating a small crimson pool. Her ribs felt like shattered glass grinding together. But she was conscious, mobile, unflinching. The referee remembered his role and raised his voice above the chaos. Time, 2 minutes elapsed. Staff Sergeant Reeves survives the engagement. Survives. The word felt inadequate for what had just occurred. Maya forced herself to sit up, though the movement sent fresh waves of agony through her torso. Around her, Vance's 5 men were in various states of recovery. Webb was still rubbing his hyperextended elbow. Morrison sat against the wall, breathing hard. Rodriguez held his ribs. Chen's ankle had swollen to twice its normal size. Kowalski's face was a mask of disbelief and frustration. All 5 of them, elite fighters, decorated soldiers, experienced instructors, had failed to neutralize one 145-pound woman in 2 minutes. But Maya's eyes weren't on them. She was looking across the mat to where Master Sergeant Derek Vance stood, his face drained of color, his carefully constructed narrative crumbling before hundreds of witnesses. She locked eyes with him and spoke clearly enough for the front rows to hear. "Standards matter, Master Sergeant. Real operators earn their place." His own words thrown back in his face. Captain Sarah Chen pushed through the crowd, medical bag in hand. "Maya, don't move. Let me check for serious injuries." "I'm fine," Maya rasped, though she clearly wasn't. "You're not fine. You just fought 5 men for 2 minutes. Let me do my job." As Captain Chen examined her ribs, Colonel Harwick approached, his expression carefully neutral. "That was unprecedented, Staff Sergeant. The medical team needs to clear you, but pending their assessment, your weapons and credentials will be returned immediately." "And the investigation?" Maya asked. Harwick glanced at Vance, who stood frozen at the edge of the mat. "Given the results here and some new evidence that's come to light, I expect a favorable resolution. Very favorable." Lewis broke through the crowd, grinning like a madman. 90 seconds. They said you wouldn't make 90 seconds. You went the full 2 minutes and took down all 5 of them." "I didn't take them all down," Maya corrected. "I neutralized 3 and survived the other 2. Semantics, you won." Had she? Maya's gaze swept the room, at the soldiers recording on phones, at the officers in heated discussion, at the medics tending to Vance's injured team. This moment would be analyzed, debated, celebrated, and criticized. The video would spread. The story would grow. She'd wanted to clear her name, to get her rifle back, to return to being a soldier. Instead, she became something else. A symbol, a statement, a line in the sand. The thought exhausted her more than the fight had. But then she saw them, scattered throughout the crowd, maybe a dozen women in various uniforms. Some were support personnel, some combat arms, a few wore tabs indicating special operations. They weren't cheering or shouting. They were watching with expressions Maya recognized, hope mixed with fear, pride mixed with caution. They knew what this moment meant, what it would cost, what it might make possible. One of them, a young specialist Maya didn't know, caught her eye and mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." Maya nodded, understanding settling over her like a weight and a purpose combined. Captain Chen finished her examination. Possible cracked rib, definitely deep tissue bruising, mild concussion, and your shoulders partially subluxated. You need X-rays, observation, and at least 3 days of rest. "Tomorrow," Maya said, struggling to her feet despite Chen's protests. "I'll go tomorrow." Because right now she needed to stand. Needed these soldiers to see her on her feet, unbroken, unbowed. She limped to where Webb, Morrison, Chen, Rodriguez, and Kowalski sat recovering. They watched her approach warily, uncertain of her intent. Maya extended her hand to Webb, the first opponent she'd neutralized. He stared at it for a long moment, then took it. I've never seen anything like that. You fought well, Maya said, meaning it. All of you did. Not well enough, Morrison said quietly. Then, surprising everyone including himself. But that was the most impressive thing I've ever seen in combatives. Seriously. Chen, nursing his swollen ankle, nodded. The flying triangle on Morrison, the counterthrow on me, those were black belt level techniques executed under impossible conditions. We underestimated you, Rodriguez admitted. Vance told us you were soft, political, hadn't earned your place. He was wrong. Kowalski said nothing, just stared at the mat, processing his failure. Maya addressed them all. This wasn't about you. It was never about you. You're good fighters, good soldiers, you got used. She turned to face Vance, who still hadn't moved from his position at the mat's edge. The crowd quieted, sensing the confrontation to come. Maya walked toward him, each step deliberate despite the pain. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see the rage and humiliation warring in his eyes. You promised to withdraw your complaints, she said. I expect you to honor that. Vance's jaw worked, muscles twitching. For a moment, Maya thought he might refuse, might try to twist the outcome somehow. Then General Moss's voice cut through the tension. Master Sergeant Vance, a word, my office, now. The general's tone left no room for argument. Vance's eyes swept the room one last time, at his defeated team, at the recording phones, at the soldiers who'd bet against Maya and lost. This isn't over, he said quietly, so only Maya could hear. Yes, Maya replied just as quietly, it is. As MPs escorted Vance from the training center, the crowd finally broke, soldiers surrounding Maya, some offering congratulations, others still processing what they'd witnessed. Lewis and several members of Phantom 6 formed a protective barrier, giving her space. Through the chaos, Maya caught sight of the young specialist again, the one who'd thanked her. The woman stood a little straighter now, her expression different, less afraid, more determined. Maybe that was the real victory. Not the 2 minutes on the mat, but the possibility those 2 minutes created. Maya allowed herself to be guided toward the medical bay, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion and pain. Behind her, she could hear soldiers already retelling the story, the details growing more dramatic with each iteration. In 90 seconds, she'd taken down 5 elite soldiers. In 2 minutes, she'd survived the impossible. But the real fight was just beginning. The medical bay's fluorescent lights felt harsh after the adrenaline-fueled chaos of the training center. Maya sat on an examination table, her rash guard cut away, revealing a torso that looked like an abstract painting in purple and black. Captain Sarah Chen, the psychologist, not the injured jiu-jitsu practitioner, stood nearby while a combat medic named Specialist Torres wrapped Maya's ribs. Hairline fracture on the 7th rib, Torres announced, studying the portable X-ray. Deep contusions across the intercostal muscles. Mild shoulder subluxation already reduced. Grade 2 concussion. You're lucky, Staff Sergeant. Could have been much worse. Doesn't feel lucky, Maya muttered, wincing as Torres tightened the compression wrap. You fought 5 men for 2 minutes and walked away. That's the definition of lucky. The door opened, and Colonel Harwick entered carrying a locked case that Maya recognized immediately. Her heart rate spiked. I believe these belong to you, he said, opening the case. Inside lay her sidearm and her rifle, Danny's promise, exactly as she'd surrendered them 4 days ago. 4 days that felt like 4 years. Maya's hands trembled as she reached for the rifle, then stopped. The investigation is being expedited given recent developments, Harwick said, but there's someone who can explain better than I can. As if on cue, Brigadier General Patricia Moss entered, her single star gleaming under the harsh lights. Everyone in the room snapped to attention, or tried to in Maya's case, before pain forced her back down. At ease, sit, Reeves, before you hurt yourself worse. Moss pulled a chair close to the examination table, her expression unreadable. What I'm about to tell you is classified until the official announcement tomorrow. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Master Sergeant Vance's complaint against you was not his first. It wasn't even his 10th. Moss opened a tablet, scrolling through files. Over the past 3 years, he has filed formal complaints against 13 female soldiers across multiple units. 9 were forced out of their positions. 3 transferred to avoid the stigma. 1, Sergeant First Class Amanda Reyes, took her own life 6 months ago. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. What? She was a combat medic attached to 3rd Special Forces Group. Decorated. Competent. Vance filed complaints alleging she'd falsified medical qualifications and engaged in inappropriate relationships with team members. The investigation cleared her, but the damage was done. Her reputation was destroyed. She couldn't handle the whispers, the isolation, the doubt. Maya's vision blurred. A soldier, a sister in arms, dead because of one man's vendetta. We've been building a case against Vance for 6 months, Moss continued. But he was careful. Anonymous complaints, plausible allegations, just enough truth mixed with lies to create doubt. He knew how to work the system, how to weaponize regulations meant to protect soldiers. Then, why didn't you stop him before he came after me? Because we needed proof. Concrete, undeniable proof that would hold up in court-martial proceedings and withstand media scrutiny. Moss leaned forward. You gave us that proof, Reeves, and not just through your performance today. She tapped the tablet, bringing up an email chain. Recognize this address. Maya squinted at the screen. The sender was email-protected, generic, anonymous, but the writing style in the complaints looked familiar. We traced it to a burner account created from Vance's personal laptop, Moss explained. He got sloppy 6 weeks ago, forgot to use the VPN he'd been using to hide his digital footprint. Our cyber forensics team connected him to 8 false complaint accounts. 8? Colonel Harwick's expression darkened. You said 13 complaints. 5 were filed under his own name, complaints that appeared legitimate on the surface, but contained fabricated evidence. The other 8 used sock puppet accounts to create the appearance of multiple independent sources. Classic disinformation tactics. Specialist Torres finished bandaging Maya's ribs and quietly excused himself, recognizing this conversation was above his clearance level. Captain Chen remained, her expression troubled. General, I treated 3 of those 13 women for anxiety, depression, and PTSD-related symptoms. I documented that their psychological distress stemmed from workplace harassment, but I never connected the cases. They were in different units, different times. That was intentional, Moss interrupted. Vance spaced out his attacks, rotated targets across units, made sure no pattern was immediately visible. He was methodical, patient, and he almost got away with it. What changed? Maya asked. You did, Moss stood, packing. When Vance filed against you, he broke pattern. You were too high profile, too decorated, too connected. Your team, Phantom 6, started asking questions. Sergeant Ortega filed a counter-complaint. Colonel Harwick requested a full review of Vance's prior allegations. That triggered our investigation to accelerate. So I was bait, Maya said flatly. You were a catalyst, there's a difference. Moss met her eyes. I'm sorry we couldn't warn you. If Vance suspected we were onto him, he would have destroyed evidence, disappeared into retirement, and we'd never get justice for Sergeant Reyes or the others. The door burst open. Lewis rushed in, followed by 3 other members of Phantom 6, Staff Sergeant Chen Rodriguez, Sergeant First Class Maria Santos, and Captain Jake Morrison, their team leader. We just heard, Lewis said breathlessly. Vance is being arrested. MPs took him from the command building in handcuffs. It's all over base social media. Morrison approached Maya, his usually stern face showing rare emotion. "I owe you an apology, Maya. When the complaints first surfaced, I had doubts. Not many, but enough that I didn't fight as hard as I should have to defend you." "You followed protocol," Maya said. "Protocol isn't enough when a teammate's reputation is being assassinated." Morrison extended his hand. "I should have trusted what I knew about you over what paperwork claimed. I'm sorry." Maya shook his hand, seeing genuine regret in his eyes. "We're good, sir." "The video from today's fight has 17,000 views already," Santos said, holding up her phone. "It's spreading across military social media like wildfire. People are calling it the most impressive combatives demonstration they've ever seen." "Or the most controversial," Rodriguez added. "The comments section is a war zone. Half saying you're a hero, half saying it was staged or that Vance's guys threw the fight." "Let them talk," Moss said dismissively. "The court-martial will reveal the truth. Speaking of which," she turned to Maya, "you'll need to testify. Describe the harassment, the psychological impact, what you observed of Vance's behavior toward female soldiers." "What about his team?" "Webb, Morrison, Chen, Rodriguez, Kowalski. They participated in what was essentially a setup. They were following orders from a superior NCO," Moss explained. "And according to preliminary interviews, they believed it was a legitimate challenge, not part of a harassment campaign. However," the general's expression hardened. "Private First Class Jordan Webb has come forward with additional information. Apparently, Vance gave his team specific instructions before the fight, instructions that are problematic." "What kind of instructions?" Harwick asked. Moss pulled up another file on her tablet. "Webb recorded a conversation 3 days before the match. Vance explicitly told his team, and I quote, 'Make her hurt, make her bleed, make her quit. I want footage of her broken and crying so every woman thinking about special operations knows what happens when they try to play soldier.'" The room fell silent. Even Lewis, rarely at a loss for words, just stared. "He wanted to destroy me publicly," Maya said slowly. "Not just my career, my will. He wanted to make an example." "Yes, which makes this attempted assault under color of authority. That's a court-martial offense with potential prison time." Moss closed the tablet. "Webb's testimony, combined with the digital evidence and your performance today, gives us an airtight case." "Why did Webb come forward?" Captain Chen asked. "Why break ranks?" "Because," came a voice from the doorway, "I didn't sign up to destroy someone's life over a personal vendetta." Private First Class Jordan Webb stepped into the medical bay, flanked by 2 JAG officers. He looked young, maybe 23, with the muscular build of someone who lived in the gym. His face bore the marks of his fight with Maya: a swollen jaw, bruised eye, bandaged elbow. "Staff Sergeant Reeves," he said formally, "I owe you an apology and an explanation." Maya studied him carefully. "You're the one who armbarred in 8 seconds. A rueful smile. "Yeah, that was humbling. I've been training MMA for 6 years and you took me apart like I was a white belt." He sobered. "But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because what Master Sergeant Vance did was wrong. What he asked us to do was wrong, and I can't live with being part of it." "Tell her what you told us," one of the JAG officers prompted. Webb took a breath. 3 days before the fight, Vance called us together privately. He said you were a political plant, that you'd slept your way through selection, that you were a danger to real operators. He showed us evidence, emails, evaluations, photos that supposedly proved you were incompetent. "Fabricated evidence," Moss interjected. "I know that now, but at the time it seemed credible. Vance was a legend. 20 years in special operations, 2 Silver Stars, multiple combat deployments. We trusted him." Webb's voice cracked. "He told us the fight wasn't about proving you didn't belong. It was about making sure every woman watching understood the cost of trying to be something they weren't built for." Maya's hands clenched. "So you were supposed to hurt me." "Not just hurt. Humiliate, break." He wanted you on the mat, bleeding and crying, with 300 soldiers watching. He wanted that footage to go viral as a warning. But that's not what happened, Lewis said. No, Webb looked directly at Maya. What happened was I watched the toughest fighter I've ever faced dismantle our entire team with skill, courage, and intelligence. You didn't just survive, you dominated. And afterward, when you shook our hands and told us we'd fought well, even though we'd tried to destroy you. He trailed off. That's when I knew everything Vance said was a lie. The recording, Morrison prompted. Webb pulled out his phone. I recorded Vance's pre-fight briefing. I didn't plan to use it. I record all my training sessions to review technique. But when I heard what happened to Sergeant Reyes, when I learned you were the 13th woman Vance had targeted, I knew I had to come forward. He handed the phone to General Moss, who listened to 30 seconds of audio before nodding grimly. This, combined with the digital evidence and testimony from other victims, gives us everything we need. Master Sergeant Vance will face a general court-martial on charges including conspiracy, conduct unbecoming, assault under color of authority, and contributing to the death of Sergeant Reyes. Will it stick? Maya asked. It'll stick, Moss assured her. He'll be dishonorably discharged, stripped of rank and benefits, and likely serve prison time. Maya should have felt satisfaction, victory, justice. Instead, she felt hollow. 13 women, how many careers ended, how many lives ruined, and for what? Because he couldn't accept that women could do the job. Some men, General Moss said quietly, measure their worth by who they can keep out rather than who they can build up. Vance is one of them. But you, Staff Sergeant Reeves, you just proved that competence, courage, and skill matter more than prejudice. At what cost? Maya looked at her bandaged ribs, her swollen hands. I had to fight 5 men in hand-to-hand combat to prove I deserved my own rifle back. What kind of system is that? The room had no answer. Finally, Colonel Harwick spoke. An imperfect one. But systems change when people like you refuse to quit, when people like Private Webb find their courage, when people like General Moss use their authority to demand justice. And when people like Sergeant Reyes are remembered, Captain Chen added softly. Her death won't be in vain, Maya. This case will trigger reforms, better oversight, stronger protections, accountability for harassment. Maya nodded, exhausted beyond words. When's the court-martial? Preliminary hearings start next week, Moss said. The trial itself, probably 4 to 6 weeks. You'll need to testify, but we'll prepare you thoroughly. In the meantime, Harwick said, lifting the rifle case again, these are yours. Full reinstatement effective immediately. You're cleared to return to Phantom 6 pending medical clearance. Maya reached for Danny's promise, her fingers closing around familiar metal and polymer. The weight felt right, complete. There's one more thing, General Moss said. The Army is launching a formal review of harassment and discrimination in special operations. You've been requested to participate as an advisor. It's voluntary, and it would be in addition to your regular duties. Requested by who? The Secretary of the Army. Your fight today got attention at the highest levels. They want your insight on how to prevent this from happening again. Maya looked at the faces around her. Lewis, her team, the officers who'd supported her, even Webb, who'd found the courage to do the right thing. I'll do it, she said, but on one condition. Name it. No more symbols. No more poster child for integration. I participate as a soldier, an operator, someone with experience, not as the woman who fought 5 men. Moss smiled. Deal, now get some rest, you've earned it. As the room cleared, Lewis lingered. You okay? Maya looked at her rifle, at her bandaged body, at the future that felt both terrifying and full of possibility. Ask me in 6 weeks, after the trial, after we see if anything actually changes. It'll change, Lewis said with certainty. You made sure of that. After he left, Maya sat alone in the medical bay, cradling Danny's promise. "I hope you're right," she whispered to her brother's memory. "I really hope you're right." Courtroom at Fort Bragg's Judge Advocate building was packed beyond capacity. 3 weeks had passed since Maya's 2-minute fight, and the story had taken on a life of its own. Major news networks had picked it up. Congressional representatives had issued statements. The hashtag #StandWithReeves had trended on social media for 6 days straight. But inside this courtroom, none of that mattered. Only evidence, only testimony, only justice. Maya sat in the front row of the gallery, dressed in her Class A uniform, ribbons gleaming on her chest. Her ribs had healed enough that she could breathe without wincing. The bruises had faded from purple to yellow-green. But the weight of Sergeant Amanda Reyes' death, a woman she'd never met but whose ghost haunted this entire proceeding, pressed heavy on her shoulders. The military judge, Colonel Patricia Barnes, called the court to order. United States versus Master Sergeant Derek Vance. The accused is charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, conduct unbecoming an NCO, assault under color of authority, obstruction of justice, and contributing to the wrongful death of Sergeant First Class Amanda Reyes. How does the accused plead? Vance stood ramrod straight beside his defense counsel. His uniform was immaculate, his bearing proud despite the circumstances. When he spoke, his voice carried the same confidence that had intimidated soldiers for 20 years. "Not guilty to all charges, ma'am." The prosecution, led by Major Rachel Kim, approached the bench. "Your Honor, the United States will prove through digital forensics, witness testimony, and documentary evidence that Master Sergeant Vance conducted a 3-year campaign of harassment targeting female service members in special operations. This campaign was systematic, premeditated, and resulted in the destruction of multiple careers and the death of Sergeant Reyes." Over the next 2 days, the prosecution methodically built their case. Cyber forensics experts testified about the sock puppet email accounts traced to Vance's personal devices. Digital timestamps showed he'd authored complaints while off-duty, using VPNs to mask his location, until the one critical mistake 6 weeks ago when he'd forgotten to activate his anonymizing software. The IP address traced directly to Master Sergeant Vance's home network, testified Captain James Chen from the Army's Cyber Division. The metadata in the email files matched other documents we know he authored. The writing style analysis showed a 97% probability that the same person wrote both the anonymous complaints and Master Sergeant Vance's official reports. The defense tried to poke holes. Isn't it possible someone hacked his network, used his computer without his knowledge? Possible but extremely unlikely, Chen replied. The pattern of usage suggests someone with intimate knowledge of his routine. The emails were sent during times when we know he was home alone. Security camera footage from his housing unit shows no visitors during those periods. Day 3 brought the victims. Women whose careers Vance had derailed testified in voices that ranged from angry to broken. Staff Sergeant Jennifer Martinez described how Vance's complaint had cost her a slot in Ranger School, despite having passed every physical and mental evaluation. "He told my commander I'd cheated on the PT test," Martinez said, her voice steady but her hands trembling. "Claimed he had evidence I'd received advance notice of the test events. It was a lie. But the investigation took 4 months, and by the time I was cleared, my slot was gone. I aged out of eligibility." Captain Lisa Tran, a helicopter pilot, described similar treatment. "Master Sergeant Vance filed a complaint alleging I'd falsified flight hours and received preferential treatment in aircraft selection. The investigation grounded me for 8 months. By the time it concluded, finding zero evidence of wrongdoing, I'd lost my proficiency ratings. I had to recertify from scratch." One by one they came. 9 women, 9 destroyed careers, 9 lives derailed by a man who couldn't accept their presence. Then came the testimony everyone had been waiting for. The United States calls Private First Class Jordan Webb. Webb entered in his dress uniform, walking with a slight limp, his knee still recovering from Maya's takedown 3 weeks ago. He took the oath, sat, and looked directly at Vance. "Private Webb," Major Kim began, "you were part of Master Sergeant Vance's demonstration team. Tell the court about the briefing 3 days before the challenge match with Staff Sergeant Reeves." Webb pulled out his phone, and the bailiff connected it to the courtroom audio system. His voice was quiet as he explained, "I record all my training sessions for technique review. I didn't know this would be important until later, but I captured the entire pre-fight briefing." "Play the recording, please." The courtroom fell silent as Vance's voice filled the space, clear, authoritative, damning. "Listen up, this isn't a demonstration. This is an execution. Staff Sergeant Reeves thinks she belongs in special operations. She thinks she earned her place. We're going to prove otherwise." Another voice, Morrison's. "Sir, the colonel said this was just a challenge match. 2 minutes professional demonstration." "The colonel sees what he wants to see. Our mission is different. I want her hurt. I want her bleeding. I want her on that mat, broken and crying, with 300 soldiers watching. I want footage that goes viral, footage that shows every woman thinking about special operations exactly what happens when they try to play soldier." Rodriguez's voice, "Sir, that sounds like we're trying to injure her." "I'm trying to save lives. Real operators' lives. Women don't belong in combat roles. They're a liability, a distraction, a political checkbox that gets real soldiers killed. You've all seen it. The lowered standards, the preferential treatment, the commanders too scared of lawsuits to enforce discipline. It ends here. It ends with her." Webb's recorded voice, "What if she wins?" Vance's laughter, harsh and confident, "She won't, trust me. I've broken tougher soldiers than her. By the time we're done, she'll quit the army entirely, and the video will make sure no other woman is stupid enough to try." The recording ended. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Major Kim let it hang there for 10 seconds before speaking. "Private Webb, why didn't you refuse these orders?" "Because I believed him," Webb said, his voice cracking. "Master Sergeant Vance was a legend. 20 years in special operations, 2 silver stars, countless successful missions. When a man like that tells you someone's a fraud, you believe him. When he says lives are at stake, you trust his judgment." "When did you realize he was lying?" "About 30 seconds into the fight with Staff Sergeant Reeves." Webb looked at Maya in the gallery. "I watched her dismantle our entire team with skill I've rarely seen. After she beat all 5 of us, she shook our hands and told us we'd fought well, even though we'd tried to humiliate her, hurt her, destroy her career. That's when I knew. Everything Vance said was a lie." "What made you come forward with this recording?" "I learned about Sergeant Reyes." Webb's composure cracked. "I learned that a soldier, a decorated combat medic, killed herself because of complaints Master Sergeant Vance filed against her. And I realized if I stayed silent, I was complicit in her death and the destruction of every other woman he'd targeted." The defense attorney, Major Stephen Walsh, stood for cross-examination. "Private Webb, isn't it true you were facing potential charges for your participation in the assault on Staff Sergeant Reeves?" "Objection," Major Kim called. "Relevance goes to witness credibility and potential bias, Your Honor." "I'll allow it. Answer the question, Private." Webb nodded. "Yes, sir. I was told I might face charges for assault under color of authority, but that's not why I came forward. I came forward because it was the right thing to do." "Convenient timing, though. Come forward with evidence against your superior. Avoid prosecution yourself." "I was given immunity in exchange for testimony," Webb admitted. "But I would have testified anyway. What we did was wrong. What Master Sergeant Vance orchestrated was wrong. And Sergeant Reyes deserves justice, even if I have to sacrifice my career to get it for her." Walsh pressed for another hour, but Webb's testimony held. The recording was authenticated by audio forensics experts. The timeline matched. The evidence was irrefutable. Day 4 brought the most devastating testimony. The United States calls Dr. Michael Reyes. A man in his mid-50s entered the courtroom, grief etched into every line of his face. Amanda Reyes' father, a retired Army colonel himself. Major Kim handled him gently. "Colonel Reyes, can you describe your daughter's state of mind in the weeks before her death?" His voice was hollow. Amanda was broken. She'd survived 2 combat deployments without a scratch, saved countless lives as a medic, earned her Special Forces tab through sheer determination. Then Master Sergeant Vance filed his complaints, and everything fell apart. "Did she discuss the investigation with you?" "Every day. She couldn't understand why someone would lie about her. She'd never falsified medical qualifications. She'd never had inappropriate relationships. But the whispers started. Soldiers who'd trusted her with their lives suddenly questioned whether she was competent. Her chain of command treated her like a problem to be managed rather than a soldier to be supported." "When did you last speak with her?" Colonel Reyes' hands shook. "The night before she died. She called me at 2300 hours. She was crying. She said, 'Dad, I can't do this anymore. Even if the investigation clears me, I'll always be the woman who got investigated. I'll always be suspect. I can't live like that.'" "What did you tell her?" "I told her to come home, to take leave, get some distance, let me help her fight this. She said she'd think about it." The next morning, her roommate found her. Overdose of sleeping pills. The note said she was sorry for being weak, sorry for letting everyone down, sorry for thinking she could ever belong. The courtroom was silent, except for muffled crying from several spectators. "Colonel Reyes, did the subsequent investigation clear your daughter of all allegations?" "Yes, every single one. The investigator concluded there was no evidence of wrongdoing, that the complaints appeared to be fabricated. But by then, Amanda was dead." Major Kim let the word settle. No further questions. The defense had nothing. How could they cross-examine a father's grief? Day 5 brought the closing arguments. Master Sergeant Vance abused his position, his reputation, and the trust soldiers placed in him. Major Kim told the jury of 7 officers. He didn't just file false complaints. He orchestrated a systematic campaign to drive women out of special operations through lies, manipulation, and psychological warfare. 13 women targeted, 9 careers destroyed, 1 life ended. This isn't a case about political correctness or social engineering. This is about a soldier who betrayed everything the uniform stands for. The defense made their case. Procedural errors, insufficient evidence connecting Vance directly to Reyes' death, character witnesses testifying to his decorated service. But none of it mattered against the weight of evidence. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous on all counts: guilty. Colonel Barnes addressed Vance directly. "Master Sergeant Derek Vance, this court finds you guilty of conspiracy, conduct unbecoming, assault under color of authority, obstruction of justice, and contributing to the wrongful death of Sergeant First Class Amanda Reyes. You are hereby sentenced to reduction in rank to Private E1, forfeiture of all pay and allowances, dishonorable discharge, and confinement for 5 years. She paused, her voice hardening. "You wore the uniform for 20 years. You earned commendations and respect, but you used that respect as a weapon against soldiers who had every right to serve alongside you. You didn't just break regulations. You broke trust, broke careers, and broke lives. This court hopes your punishment serves as a warning that such conduct will not be tolerated." The gavel fell. As military police led Vance from the courtroom in handcuffs, he looked directly at Maya one final time. No defiance, no rage, just the hollow recognition of absolute defeat. Maya met his eyes and said nothing. She didn't need to. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Maya made a brief statement, reading from prepared notes. Today's verdict brings some measure of justice for Sergeant Amanda Reyes and the other women whose careers were destroyed by Master Sergeant Vance's actions. But this isn't just about one man. It's about creating systems that protect soldiers from harassment, that value competence over prejudice, that ensure everyone who earns their place gets to keep it. That work continues. That evening, Maya visited Arlington National Cemetery. She'd never met Amanda Reyes, but she found her grave, Section 60, Row K, marker 847. She placed her Ranger tab on the headstone, the same tab Reyes had earned and been denied the chance to fully embrace. "You deserved better," Maya whispered. "We all did, but it's changing now. I promise you it's changing." The wind carried her words across the rows of white markers, past her brother's grave 3 sections over, into the gathering dusk. Justice had been served, but the real work building something better was just beginning. 6 months later, undisclosed location, Middle East. The desert heat shimmered off the rooftop 3,000 meters from the target compound. Maya lay prone behind her rifle, Danny's promise, her breathing synchronized with the rhythm of distant wind patterns. Sweat trickled down her spine beneath the ghillie suit, but her hands were steady, her mind clear. "Phantom 6-1, we have movement," Lewis's voice crackled through her earpiece from the Overwatch position 200 meters east. "3 hostiles on the south balcony. HVT is still inside." "Copy," Maya whispered, her eye pressed to the scope. Through the optic's clarity she could see the compound, a fortified structure where intelligence indicated an American journalist was being held, 48 hours in captivity. The clock was ticking. 6 months had passed since Vance's court-martial. 6 months of physical therapy, testimony before congressional committees, endless media requests she'd politely declined. 6 months of helping draft new harassment prevention protocols for special operations units. But mostly, 6 months of getting back to what she was trained to do, being a soldier. 1-6 actual, Captain Morrison's voice came through. "Hostage just appeared in the north window. 2nd floor, 3rd room from the left. 10-second window before they move her again." Maya shifted her aim, calculating wind speed, temperature, humidity, the slight upward angle. At 2,847 meters, 1,000 variables could send the shot wide. She'd made longer shots before, but never with a hostage's life hanging in the balance. "Stand by," she murmured, her finger resting lightly on the trigger guard. The wind shifted. Maya adjusted .3 mils right. Through the scope she saw him, the guard positioned directly behind the hostage, using her as a human shield, classic terrorist playbook. He thought his position made him untouchable. He was wrong. The hostage moved slightly, creating a gap, 2 inches of target. Maya's breathing slowed. Heartbeat dropped to 45 beats per minute. The world narrowed to the reticle, the target, the mathematics of ballistics. "Sending," she whispered. The trigger broke clean. The rifle bucked against her shoulder with familiar authority. For a moment everything was silence. Then Lewis's voice. "Target down, clean hit, hostage is safe, package is secure." "Assault team moving," Morrison commanded. 6-1, maintain overwatch. Maya kept her eye to the scope, scanning for additional threats as Phantom 6 breached the compound below. 3 minutes of controlled chaos, flashbangs, door breaches, methodical room clearing. Then Morrison's voice. "All hostiles neutralized. Package is secure and unharmed." "Good shot, 6-1. Moving to exfil position. As Maya broke down her rifle and prepared to move, she felt the familiar satisfaction of a mission completed. Not the media circus. Not the congressional testimony. Just this. Using her skills to save American lives. This was what she'd fought for. This was what Sergeant Reyes had deserved the chance to do. 3 days later, Fort Bragg. Maya walked across the base toward the training facility, her rifle case slung over one shoulder. The afternoon sun was warm but not oppressive, perfect weather for the session she'd agreed to conduct. Inside the range building, 20 soldiers waited. All women, all in various stages of special operations training pipelines, some Rangers, some Special Forces candidates, some preparing for selection courses. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the front. "Staff Sergeant Reeves is here to share some insights on combatives," marksmanship, and navigating the unique challenges you'll face as women in special operations. Please give her your attention." Maya set down her rifle case and surveyed the room. Their faces showed a mixture of determination, anxiety, hope, and wariness. She recognized those expressions, had worn them herself not so long ago. "Not here to give you an inspirational speech," Maya began. "I'm not going to tell you that gender doesn't matter or that everyone will accept you if you just work hard enough. That's bullshit and you all know it." Few soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Chen looked concerned, but Maya continued. "What I will tell you is this: you will be doubted. You will be tested more harshly than your male peers. Some people will always question whether you earned your place or were given it. And occasionally you'll encounter someone like Master Sergeant Vance who actively works to destroy you." She let that sink in before adding, "But you know what? None of that matters if you're competent, confident, and committed. The doubters don't get to define you. The tests that seem unfair will actually make you better. And the Vances of the world, they lose in the end if you refuse to quit." A young specialist in the front row raised her hand. "Staff Sergeant, I watched the video of your fight. Everyone says it was incredible, but was it worth it, having to prove yourself that way?" Maya considered the question carefully. "I didn't want to fight 5 men to keep my rifle. I wanted a fair investigation and basic professional respect. But I was forced into a situation where that was my only option. Was it worth it?" She paused. "Ask me something else. Was it necessary?" "Yes." "Did it expose a systemic problem that's now being addressed?" "Yes." "Did it potentially make things easier for all of you?" "I hope so." Another hand. "What's your advice for dealing with harassment?" "Document everything. Find allies, and they exist, trust me. Use the system when you can, but know its limitations. And remember that your competence is your best defense. Be so undeniably good at your job that the lies become obviously false." "If the system fails," someone asked from the back, "then you adapt. You find another path. You get creative. And you never, ever let someone else's prejudice determine your future." Maya smiled slightly. "Also, learn hand-to-hand combat, just in case." Nervous laughter rippled through the room. For the next 2 hours, Maya ran them through drills, combatives techniques for asymmetric size matchups, marksmanship fundamentals, mental conditioning exercises. She shared lessons learned from her own experiences, both the successes and the failures. As the session ended, the young specialist from earlier approached hesitantly. "Staff Sergeant Reeves, I just wanted to say, I almost dropped out of my training program last month. The instructors aren't openly hostile, but I could feel the doubt, like they were waiting for me to fail. Then I saw your video and I decided to stay. So thank you." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. "What's your name?" Specialist Emma Kowalski, Staff Sergeant. "Related to Sergeant First Class Danny Kowalski. One of the guys I fought. He's my brother. He told me what really happened that day, how Master Sergeant Vance manipulated them, how you handled everything with professionalism even after you won. He said you're the kind of soldier he wants to be." She paused. "He also said to tell you he's sorry. Brother fought hard and honorably. He has nothing to apologize for." After Kowalski left, Captain Chen approached. "That was good work, Maya. Those women needed to hear from someone who's been through it." "I'm not a role model, Sarah. I'm just a soldier who had to fight a little harder to do her job." "That's exactly why you're a role model." That evening, Maya drove to the National Cemetery 2 hours north. She parked and walked through rows of white headstones until she found 2 graves, her brother Danny's and nearby Amanda Reyes's. She placed fresh flowers on both, then stood in silence as the sun set. "We're making progress," she said quietly. "New harassment protocols, better oversight, more women making it through selection. It's not perfect, but it's better. Vance is in prison. The women he targeted are getting recognition and compensation. And today, I trained 20 soldiers who might not have to go through what we did." Wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass and approaching rain. "Danny, you always told me to make my own path. I think I finally found it, not just being a soldier, but making it possible for others to be soldiers too." She touched her brother's headstone. "And Amanda, I never knew you, but I'm trying to honor your memory by making sure your death meant something, by making sure it never happens again." As darkness fell, Maya walked back to her car. Her phone buzzed, a message from Morrison. Mission debrief 800 tomorrow. Then we've got a new tasking. Wheels up in 72 hours. Maya smiled and typed back. Always she was a soldier, an operator, a member of Phantom 6. And yes, now she was also someone who spoke at training sessions, who testified before Congress, who appeared in news articles about military reform. But that last part, the symbol, the spokesperson, the face of change, that was just an additional duty. Her primary job remained unchanged. Complete the mission, protect her teammates, serve her country. The rifle in her trunk, Danny's promise, had been stripped away once. She'd fought to get it back. And now, 6 months later, it had saved a hostage's life from 2,847 meters away. That was the real victory. Not the court-martial verdict or the policy changes or the viral video. The real victory was being allowed to do the job she'd trained for, the job she'd earned, the job she was damn good at. As Maya drove through the base gates, past the sign reading Fort Bragg, home of the Airborne and Special Operations Forces, she thought about the 20 women she'd trained today, about Emma Kowalski choosing to stay in her program, about the next generation of soldiers who might face fewer barriers because of the battles fought before them. She thought about Master Sergeant Vance, sitting in a military prison, his legacy destroyed. And she thought about Sergeant Amanda Reyes, who'd paid the ultimate price but whose death had finally triggered the change that her service alone couldn't achieve. "We're not done yet," Maya said to the empty car, to the ghosts of soldiers past, to the promise of soldiers' future. "But we're getting there." Phone buzzed again. "Lewis this time. Barbecue at my place tomorrow. Team mandatory attendance. Bring beer." Maya laughed and replied, "Copy. See you there. 72 hours until the next mission." But tomorrow, she'd be with her team, her chosen family, the soldiers who'd stood by her when everything fell apart. That night, Maya cleaned her rifle with the same care she'd given it for 8 years. Each piece disassembled, inspected, cleaned, oiled, reassembled. The ritual was meditative, grounding, connecting her to every mission she'd completed, every life she'd saved, every moment when this weapon had been the difference between success and failure. When she finished, she ran her hand along the stock where she'd carved 3 words years ago. Danny's promise. Her brother had promised to always have her back. He'd kept that promise even in death by teaching her to fight, to think, to never quit. Now it was her turn to keep promises, to the soldiers she trained, to the system she was helping reform, to the memory of those who'd paid too high a price. Maya Reeves holstered her sidearm, locked her rifle in its case, and turned off the lights. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new missions, new battles worth fighting. But tonight, for the first time in 6 months, she slept without nightmares. She was a soldier. She'd earned her place. And nobody would take that away from her again. The end.